Hello, guys. Welcome back from snow day on Monday. So you're probably watching this on Wednesday. I'm going to try and have it actually up on Tuesday, the 24th, today, this afternoon. But lots to go over, lots to do. So we'll get right into it. This week, you guys have academic advising. All right. Actually, before we talk about that. So today is grammar exercise one, creating the blueprint, and then grounding quote from Zora Neale Hurston: research is formalized curiosity. It is poking and prying with a purpose. I always enjoyed that quote. So this week you've got academic advising. All right. So you are going to go down. So meet in the classroom. You are going to meet in the classroom. All right. As far as I know, if you get told something different on Wednesday, because I'm not in the building, like something has changed, the sub says, hey, we're going to be doing X instead, um, follow their lead, okay? Because I'm not in the building. This is operating off old plans and stuff. But the original plan had been you were meeting in the classroom, and then you go down to the College Career Center as a group. All right. For you guys, that'll be on Friday. That's so the snow day is not going to affect anything. I'd only planned one lesson for this week anyway, so nothing is really going to be changing. You just didn't have work day, which you hopefully spent out having a good time on the snow day. Vocab exercise one is due this week. So when you come to the classroom, go ahead and put that in the bin. The I can't remember if I covered this. The word search was 5 points. The definitions were 15, 1 point each. Please make sure complete sentences, punctuation, capitalization. It should be 20s across the board for everybody. All right. At this stage, everyone should know what they're doing. What is it I wanted? Oh, grammar exercise one. All right. So you should have a physical copy of grammar exercise one on the back table. All right. I've got a digital one here somewhere. All right. So I've got a digital one here. It'll look something like this. Now, I've put two examples there just to kind of help you out. There are 20 sentences that you're going to be diagramming. Okay. So to go over the basics, remember every single diagram, you're going to have a vertical line that separates the subject from the predicate. Okay. Then you have the horizontal line, and at this stage, everything is on top of the horizontal line. We'll get into modifiers next week as we kind of add more complexity to this. You can have compound subjects or compound predicates. You can also have compound subjects and compound predicates. Remember, if you have a conjunction in your compound subject or your compound predicate, then you're going to have a triangle. Did I put one down here? I did. All right, for the example. All right, so compounds, right? You put the first subject up top and then the next subject. If you have a helping verb, that'll go in the horizontal. And then your main verbs would go here if you had a compound. Okay. So, and then look back over the slides or back over the videos for the explanation. This should be a dotted line, and then your conjunction should be here inside this triangle. I don't care if it has to be, you know, or vertical like this, but I don't care which direction it's facing. I'm agnostic. It doesn't really matter. Okay. As long as I see it inside there. If it's correlative, did I put any correlatives? Either or. So either or, right here on number 13 to give you a hint. Either or, either running or swimming, right? So this is a correlative conjunction. You have two parts. Don't forget that. All right. So in this case, either would go on one side or would go on the other. In general, your first part, the either, the neither, those are going to go inside the triangle, and then the secondary part is going to go outside the triangle right there. So just don't forget that. Okay. Anything else? Oh, for some of these sentences get more complex. Remember, we're not doing modifiers yet. We are focused on the simple subject and the simple predicate, not the complete subject, the complete predicate. Okay, so please remember that before you get down a rabbit hole, or go Google or use Chat GPT or Claude or whatever for the answer, and then give me the whole thing that's more complex than what we've covered. All right, I'm expecting what we've covered so far. Now, let's say that this short introduction reminder and the examples aren't enough. Not a problem. The message board this week is right here. All you got to do is post your questions, and I'll be monitoring this over the next 24, 48 hours or so. Okay. I'm also going to be going back through after I get this video posted. I've got to do some other stuff, and then I'm going to come in here to your pitches for your articles, and I will try to comment on most of them. Honestly, 49 means you guys were commenting on each other's, which sounds like you might have had some good. I'd pull it up. Well, actually, I don't want to pull it up because, well, I guess you guys can see who posted, right? Like the names are visible to you anyway, so I'm not protecting anyone's identity. All right, so I see a lot of comments on different people's. Let's see. Let's take a look at one right here. Una pizza Neapolitan, the way to anyone's happiness in the form of you're scouting it, you're looking for locations. Everyone knows that pizza can be enjoyed from anywhere. What makes una pizza napolitina incomparable to other pizza places? So there's a specific location, and Zara is going to be talking about this specific one, and then we have people commenting. Right, never had this before, so curious why it's one of the best. Sounds like a very good pizza place. Haven't heard this pizza place. I haven't gone. So here's how you might use this. Okay. And I'm obviously addressing Zara, but I'm addressing everybody here, okay? So Zara said, I'm looking at this particular location. I'm going to be examining like why this place stands out, and I'm looking at it, from a scout, from a logistic type, place as you're visiting it, right? You're doing like a food travel thing, right? Like Anthony Bourdain or anyone else, James May, who's done the location food type stuff. Now, you also have commentary here about people expressing, like, hey, I've not heard of this place. How does it compare to other local places? So if you get stuck, right, and you're like, well, I don't know how to get to where I want to be, to get to that anchor that I've set for myself, take a look at the commentary that people have given you. If they have questions about it, like, okay, how does it compare to other places? So not just looking at it as it compares to pizza in general, but how is it to the local places around it? Okay, so just kind of bear that in mind. These comments can be pretty beneficial to you as you're going through. So I'm going to go through how did they decide to eat a rock? Historian Salt story, right? Salt. I made comment on that, right? That people we eat rock, we eat mineral. Who was the first, right? Who held up this rock and said, what would be fun? Heirloom tomatoes, right? Preserved in your grandmother's garden. Memory keeper, the anchor beyond a regular shape. Heirloom tomatoes are really interesting because and I don't want to necessarily fall down the rabbit hole of factory farming, but the majority of tomatoes that you guys have seen in the grocery store, right, or in cans or tins or stuff like that, are round, red, and fairly decent looking tomatoes, but they weren't always that way. Heirloom tomatoes are varietals that have been held over. They're not homogeneous. So in other words, there's variety in them. You can also see carrots in this way too. If you grow your own carrots instead of buying them at the store, often you can get purple, yellow, red carrots. I think there's some varieties of even blue carrots and stuff too, right? So some of these heirloom vegetables are really interesting, but they're not as easy to get access to anymore. And a lot of times they have to be grown, right? So you have to go acquire the seeds and do the work and grow the stuff, right? So if you have an older family member, maybe they, have these more commonly. So, miso soup, interesting. Connection bowl, memory keeper. The Japanese comfort food often serve breakfast, lunch, dinner, staple during New Year's celebrations. So really good. Goes well with a lot of food. Very comforting. Sounds interesting to hear about how this plays into your life. So people are looking for like a personal connection. People are looking for, what's the comfort of this thing, right? We all have our comfort foods. It's a pairing type thing. Yeah, these are really good. So I'm going to go through later. I fall down a rabbit hole there. I am going to go through and do some commentary on there for you guys. All right. So grammar, if you have questions, I got lost in what we were talking about. If you have questions, post a question in the discussion board, and I'll be happy to comment on it. All right. What else? What else? We're going to talk about that at the end. We're going to talk about that at the end. Covered that. Academic advising, you guys are going to be on Friday, okay? All right, we've covered this. We'll close out some of this stuff. Okay. All right, let's get into it. So, creating the blueprint. All right, last class, it was about the anchor, right? In other words, you were what is essentially developing a prompt, which is a pretty valuable skill. I'm going to be honest. At some stage, you're going to reach a point in academics, especially if you stay with the AP track. Some of you who are going to jump into that next year, where you're not necessarily always given a prompt. You're going to be asked to create a prompt. And that can be a difficult skill to develop, how to ask an effective question that you then have to answer, and you don't write yourself into some kind of alleyway or into a corner, right? So the anchor is the prompt, that is the so what of this food item that you're going to be talking about. Now, you've got the idea, it's time for execution. And that's what the blueprint is. But first, I guess I should have that. I don't think I need the drawing thing today. And I'm going to forget. I don't know if I have a video, but I'm going to move it there. All right. So, what is a blueprint, right? If I was in the classroom, I'm sure you guys would say something like, it's used for planning something out, or used for buildings, right? An architect will create and utilize a blueprint to achieve their goal, which is some kind of structure, a building of some type. But blueprints are more general than that these days. We use that term to talk about how we plan things, how we get ready to create a thing. So for our, come on, there we go. For our purposes, I want you to think of the blueprint is the organization or the roadmap of the article. You have a goal. The anchor is explaining why this food matters. The blueprint is what you'll cover to prove that point. It's how you're going to achieve that goal. All right. It's a structure. It's an organization. It is essentially, how do I get to the X, marks the spot type place. So there's different ways to go about creating a blueprint. And in terms of actual people who are journalists, there are so many different methods. I knew a guy who wrote freelance for magazine articles online once, and he didn't write anything digitally until he had the full thing in his head. He did audio notes, and he had a little cassette recorder that actually was digital, and it had a battery in it, but it wasn't connected or anything like that. He just recorded notes and plot or ideas and bullet points and things like that. There are people who do mind maps. There are people who work hard copy. That's what I do a lot of times, right? So there's lots of different methods. I'm going to show you a method. Please understand that I am going to ask you to utilize this method for grading purposes for your article, but in a larger picture, when you're writing stuff on your own, try different methods, try different stuff. So it can consist of main points that you will explore in your body paragraphs, or detailed outline covering everything that is going to be in your article. An organized structure is key to ensuring your article flows logically from one idea to the next without getting lost. I cannot tell you how many times I've seen a student write a regular paper and they get lost around paragraph 3 and they're no longer addressing their thesis or their core thing. All right. Good organization makes for good writing. I appreciate there are people who just want to sit down and write the thing, but I would still argue at some point you've organized stuff in your head. And realistically, you'd have to go through a lot of revision to get that, hastily written article into some kind of organization. And I do want organization in your food articles to achieve that anchor. So, what does the writing process for this look like, right? We've given you a couple of hints and tips, and it's tough to talk about a blueprint without giving you a larger idea of what the writing process for something might be. Now, understand, an article is different than an academic paper. All right, and it should be. Different types of writing are going to utilize different types of process. So, first, in an article, you're going to more than likely pick your own topic. It's not being given to you as some kind of prompt. And even for this one, this is a summative article that you're going to be writing. I said pick a food item. Like, that's it. Like, that's that's the direction I'm giving you. All right. I'm going to ask certain things for structure, for grading purposes, and other stuff. But you know, I'm going to get papers that are about just from your comments and your pitches inside the discussion board, right? The family connection to miso soup versus why this one style of pizza place is far superior to the others versus heirloom tomatoes. So as you can see, the variety of topics is going to be different. You guys pick your topic, all right? In this quarter, it's your favorite dish, favorite food item. I'm giving you a lot of leeway there, whatever works for you. But once you have that goal, you have to develop the anchor, right? So, great. Let's say you want to talk about plantains, okay? If you don't know what a plantain is, you guys probably have interacted with them as chips, but a plantain is kind of like a banana, but it requires more processing. You can't just pick a plantain and eat it. You have to process it, cook it in some fashion. So let's say that I pick my food topic as plantains, but I need to develop an anchor. I can't just write a Wikipedia article about plantains. I need something, right? So if I was going to pick one just from my hip there, why you think this topic or this food matters? I think plantains matter because they're much more popular south of us, and maybe because they're just used to growing them there. We import bananas from there, and we import plantain chips, and you can usually find plantains at the grocery store. But I would argue that most people aren't cooking with them as much. They're not near as large a section as bananas, right? So maybe I want to look at the difference between why bananas have taken off instead of plantains, right? So there's my anchor. I want to discuss why bananas seem to be so popular, but plantains don't. And that gives me some options, right? Maybe I look into the history of it. Maybe I look into the marketing of bananas versus plantains. Maybe I'm looking into what it costs to import them. Maybe there's some economics there. And I've got some different things, but my anchor, the core of it that I'm building from, is why are bananas so much more popular than plantains? The focus being plantains. So I have an anchor, right? And then I'm going to start doing research. Now, before I had you guys go into the school databases, and there's certainly, you are welcome to do that, right? You can totally go into those databases, but you need evidence and you have to cite it narratively. And I'll touch more on that here, right? Depending on what type of evidence or what direction you're going, your evidence is going to take a different tract than it might have last quarter. So let me show you what I mean. So if you're going with historian, right, then you need stuff like dates, locations, maybe migration patterns if it's a specific animal, right? You're talking about proteins or shipping type stuff. Can we get certain fruits all around the year, or because we always seem to have avocados, but I know they don't grow year round here. So how does that happen, right? If you're writing like a scout, then you need some kind of statistics, like how many people do like that pizza place. What are the other pizza places in the area? How long has that place been there? Have they done any interviews? Are there quotes about their history and stuff? And if you're doing memory keepers, then you need some kind of cultural history or primary source interviews with your family members, with other people who enjoy. Maybe you find a blog about somebody who enjoys heirloom tomatoes. You shoot them an email so you can interview them, right, and use their actual direct quotes and stuff. But you'll notice, while a lot of these things are things you could find in an academic database, like those that you get access to from Woodson, most of this is going to be internet, is going to be you going to a place, is going to be you talking to people. So in other words, we've stepped out of the realm of the secure database, which goes through and ensures that all those sources are valid, to what is essentially the research wild west. You're now doing that legwork. You can get some stuff, right? I have no doubt I can find articles in the academic database about plantains, but is there going to be that much food writing that's in there? Probably not. I'm going to have to go talk to people. I'm going to have to go do my own research, find websites, look up articles. Maybe Babish. I'm binging with Babish. Andrew's done a recipe on it, stuff like that, right? Now, You're searching the internet for evidence, you're talking to people, but just because it's a source doesn't mean that it's logical. There's a reason why we had a lesson on logical fallacies. They don't just appear in your writing, they can appear in your sources. So it's on you to ensure that your sources are not falling into those logical fallacies, right? So appeal to nature. Um, I have no doubt in my quasi article on plantains, I would get somebody from the banana, merchants society of California who says, well, obviously bananas are better because we grow them right here in California and such, right? But that's appeal to nature. Just because it's grown there doesn't mean it's better. Just because it's available doesn't mean it's better. So you have to check out these sources and ensure that you're not falling victim to some type of fallacy that we talked about. So, which also means that since you're going to the wider internet, you can totally use social media in this. But I'm warning you right now, there's so many logical fallacies on social media. And not again, you got to remember that some of these people, they're not like actively trying to deceive people. They're just not doing their due diligence and they're passing along bad information. So do the work. Okay, talk to people in person if you can at grocery stores or family members, or shoot an email to a blog about pizza places in the area or whatnot. So do some of that evidence finding in person. Totally find internet sources, use social media and stuff, but ensure that you don't fall victim to logical fallacies and that you yourself are not using them in your writing. Now, I'm going to go ahead and bust out this form that I've given you. Okay, so we'll go ahead and jump ahead, or do I want to? Yeah, we'll go ahead and jump ahead. All right. So, to aid you in writing your food article, okay. Actually, we'll go ahead and we'll do the food writing handout. So this is posted in the assignment. You'll see in the summative folder, you now have the food writing article, a summative assignment. Okay, the final one is due on March 19th. All right, so you are going to write a 500-word informative article that goes beyond a simple review. Don't just say this stuff is tasty, right? I want good structural organization with an intentionality. I want really expressive sensory language. I want you to put me there wherever this is. Okay, so you're pretending you're writing for any kind of one of these blogs, and heck, if you like the piece enough, you can go submit it to one of them at the end. Okay, but let me grade it first. Your goal is to take a specific dish, an ingredient, restaurant, and anchor it in a larger cultural, historic, or personal significance. You're not just telling the reader what is on the plate, you're telling them why it matters. That's the goal here, okay? So, 500-word minimum. Now, yes, you can totally go over 500 words. I am going to be honest. If you're writing 2,000 words on your favorite thing, maybe give me a director's cut version of it. Like if you end up writing a lot on this topic and really enjoy the writing, that's great. But like just bear in mind. So let's try to, and this is a soft limit. I'm not going to hard cut off anyone. I will read what you submit, but let's keep it like 1,500 words, okay, at the most, if you guys don't mind. So a minimum of 2 credible sources, 2 articles, 2 different interviews, or an article interview, an article in a historic text, something like that, all right? And 4 pieces of evidence integrated into your writing. More on that in a moment. Sensory language. Describe using at least 3 senses. Actually, and I think in the rubric it says 4 plus, which is already discrepancy here. So, let's say 4. We're going to call it 4 senses, and I'm going to leave a note to myself to update all the different places that I posted this, okay? So 4 senses minimum. You can totally go over 4 senses, but 4 senses minimum. Remember, you don't just have, touch, taste, sight, right? There's an emotional sense too to things. And then a logic audit, I'm looking for the big four logical fallacies. I want them to not be there, okay? So you could also make a focus on, by the way, debunking logical fallacies about your particular food item. If you can't get stuck, and let's say you're a little short and you need another really solid, like 400 words or something like that for your, or another paragraph or something like that, debunking a common logical fallacy about it would be a really solid thing to do. So choose your topic. All right. Choose a path. Are you going to go with the historian, the scout, the memory keeper? Develop the anchor, some kind of anchor. What are you? Is your so what? What are you trying to achieve with this? What is your goal? Research. Find two sources that provide context for your article. Draft with the senses. Start when you're grabbing evidence. That's a great time to start already writing down sensory language and stuff. Finish and polish, revise and edit. I expect this to look pretty solid. Articles generated by AI lack sensory soul and personal connection required for this assignment. I would rather read an imperfect draft written by you than generic piece of AI slop. Authentic voice gives you an authentic grade. So choose a topic. I'm recommending choosing a topic like this week. All right. These dates were based off originally, you guys weren't going to have a snow day. So obviously push back a day. But I'm not grading you based on this. These are just dates to help kind of keep you in line. All right. We are going to do a day of peer review for your class on March the 11th, where you're going to be sharing your articles with each other so that people can read it. I think I'm going to require a printed version just because I think it's a little bit easier to not bother someone instead of sharing laptops and sharing digital and all that kind of stuff. So let's go ahead and say that I want this on March 11th, you to have a printed off version of your article that you can share with somebody else. The final article is going to be due March the 19th. All right. We have a rubric, sensory and descriptive voice. I want really strong sensory usage. And here, yeah, it says 4 plus. We're going to say four senses. Okay. At least four senses. You can totally use more than that. Just don't. There's a small danger here of if you're describing like 13 different senses about your favorite ramen bowl, remember that you're also wanting to achieve your anchor. And most people anchors aren't, what is it like to eat a bowl of ramen? Like most people know how to eat. So it's going to be, what's my family's connection with this thing? Or what's the history of this ramen restaurant? So don't express sensory language at the expense of your narrative. It should bolster your narrative. It should be part of the narrative, all right, to help put somebody in that place. But 500 words of just how does this one slurp of soup taste is not what I'm looking for. Is there a world where that's an effective article and people enjoy it? Totally, not a problem. But in the end, this is an assignment, okay? So don't fall down the sensory rabbit hole at the expense of your narrative. All right. Anchor and logical evidence. I'm looking for an anchor and I want to know what it is. It should be profound and obvious. It should be fairly easy to see from your article what your anchor is. All right. If it ends up being vague or it doesn't even have one and it's just kind of stream of consciousness type writing and it's full of logical fallacies, not so much. All right. Evidence or MLA formatting, same as normal. Yes, I want a heading. Yes, I want a header. Yes, I want Times New Roman, 12 point, double spaced, and all that kind of stuff. But I'm not sitting here and saying you should have 6 sentences per paragraph and these sentences should be in this order and stuff. I'm leaving that all up to you, right? I want paragraph format, yes. But as long as it adheres with MLA formatting, Times New Roman, 12 point, double space, then you're good, all right? Student has fully utilized the evidence tab. There are 3 tabs, which we'll go over here in just a moment, that I want you to utilize on the document I've given you. So also within the assignment, you'll see this, the aforementioned document. So this is part of your grade. This is the document you're going to be submitting with your article. There are 3 tabs. The first tab is evidence. Here, you're going to be putting what your topic is. You're chosen what your anchor, is your statement. You've got spots for two credible sources: credible source one, credible source two, and I want to link to them. All right. If it's an interview with a person, then tell me it's an interview with a person, but I would be recording it. So, save it to your Google Drive and share a link with me there. There should be some kind of digital footprint of some fashion for it, okay? Even if it's just a link to the pictures you took when you went to the restaurant, that's fine too. Piece of evidence. Link, piece of evidence, text. All right, same thing. It should have 4 pieces of evidence linked here, and then how you're going to use it in the article. In other words, so you may have a quote from I'm trying to think of a food map. Bon Appetit, right? Let's say that Bon Appetit did an article on heirloom tomatoes. Then here, I don't want to see the quote unless you're using it as a quote. If you end up paraphrasing it, I want to see your paraphrase. This is how you're going to use your evidence in your article. All right. So think of this as like a trial run to practice. I should see some sensory language. I totally understand if it gets changed over time, but here your article's gonna be on here too, so I'm going to see the difference. Next, we have the blueprint. All right, and this is kind of where we're at in the slide deck. All right. So once you have your pieces of evidence, then it's time to build a blueprint. Easiest way to do this is in a Google Doc to use the bullet point. This in a Google Doc is to use the bullet point option, right? So essentially you come in here, you come up to this button right here, and you create bullet points, okay? Here's, a topic. I hit enter. If I want to make it a subtopic, I hit tab. Now I have a subtopic. I hit enter. I want to do another topic. I hit enter again. Topic. If you want to move these around, let's say you change your mind, you have decrease indent and increase. Yours might be up here on the bar. Mine is under the ellipses, and I can shift these to a different hierarchy, okay? So, but that is the easiest way, and yes, I do want an outline for your blueprint, okay? So I want to see the work done here. Then on the third page, you're going to have your finished article. All right. So this is the page that I expect to be formatted in MLA. The rest of this, it's however you like it, as long as you fill stuff in, good to go. But here, I'm expecting to see MLA. And yes, I'll be checking the document history on all these to see that you did your work in this document. I should not see an article just magically appear here. All right, so I find bullet points digitally to be the easiest. Yes, I know long term, some other writing you may have your own process, but for this one, just knock it out that way, okay? Create your outline. Create your outline to give your article some type of organization. It should have an intentionality to it. It's a great chance to decide on the best order of evidence to make an article clear for your audience. Remember that your goal is to convey a narrative to your audience relating to your topic or related to your topic. All right, so let's talk about, well, real quick. So if I were to equate this into some kind of equation, right, you should have your anchor. You should have an assertion based off like your answer to that anchor that you created. Why do people love this pizza place in this area more than the others? My assertion is that people love this place because they do X, right? They only buy the flour that's been processed by civets or whatever. Then you have your blueprint. That's your structure. Once you have these things together, you use the blueprint to build an article that is asking the anchor and answered with the assertion, and then all your evidence is put in between. Bam, you have a food writing article. All right, now let's talk about organization a little bit here. All right, this is a much looser organization than an academic paper, which means you can try some things. You may start off with your plantains, right? I'm writing my article about plantain, and maybe I open up with a quick opening of me going to the store to go buy plantains. And then I talk a little bit about a history of the plantain. And then I cut to me going home and trying to eat one without cooking it and how awful it is. Then I tell more about the history of plantain or the marketing of the plantains. Then I cut to me cooking the plantain. Then I tell a little bit about the modern day plantains, how they're processed, where they're grown. And then I'm eating the plantains or serving them up for my family for dinner, right? There, I intermixed eating with the history, with my research, and it all kind of comes together. All right. Now, that's not to say that a rough draft of that is perfect. I may read through that and say, oh my God, this is all over the place. I'm jumping back and forth. This would do better if I kind of put things simply. So then in my revision, I change it so that I'm just talking about the history of plantains. Then there's a little anecdote about me going and getting the plantains and cooking them for my family. Then I talk about the modern, right? So a couple of things there. Number one, play with how you're telling the narrative. Play with how you're telling the story of this food, whatever it might be. Okay. Number two, don't be afraid to revise it. And that's where the peer review is going to be really key when we do that in March. All right. So don't be afraid to, don't get so married to your initial concept that your writing hurts because you're not willing to change things or you're too lazy to go back and change things up. All right. Play with some stuff. Try some different ways of telling that story. What's an effective way? Should I intermix things? Should I keep things separate and organized? Should I really just focus on the history of a thing and I don't need to take bring in to account century language? Well, you're gonna have to use century language, so that I don't know if that would work very well. All right, but I want you guys to try some stuff. All right, and if you're looking for inspiration, I highly recommend going and finding some food magazines or food blogs and read about how people write about this stuff. Not just here's a recipe for ribs, but like some of that food writing that is, the articles that I've been rolling out to you guys. There's 3 more that have been posted through Common Lit. So read those. You're going to be getting more vocab next week on those and stuff. And then find your own. Right? Find your own food articles that are about the history of a thing or the location of a thing and see how people tell those stories and see if you can get some inspiration from it. First, decide on the food topic. Most of you guys have. Now, the one that you posted for your article pitch does not lock you in stone just yet. Okay. I want to give you some, like, if you are posting and maybe I read yours, like, I don't quite see it yet. Maybe you want to tweak how you're approaching it. Maybe you don't want to go history, you want to go scout, or you don't want to go scout, you want to go memory keeper. That's fine. For some of you, may be like, I threw this as a last minute thing. I actually don't care about, corn on the cob. So, and I don't know if anyone has a corn on the cob, but I want to go in a different direction. All right. But pick a food topic. Then develop your anchor. Remember that anchor is the so what. Why does this matter? What is important about this food, either to you or to people in general? So it should be in the form of a question. All right. Now, this question may appear in your article or it may not. A lot of people will use these anchors as at least a rough in the early beginning as the title of their piece, and that may change over time. Your anchor may not be in your piece. And I would say kudos to those of you who don't put it in the piece, and then I have to figure it out from your reading, and I can. All right, that's going to do better. Next, do your research. Find some evidence for your article. Are you talking to a family member? Are you going to a restaurant? Are you just finding internet research? Are you going and cooking a thing, right? Which you're going to have to, spoiler, you're going to have to do for the next summative. So maybe this dovetails into your next summative. More on that next week. Try to find things that help you tell the narrative within your anchor. Then build a blueprint, some kind of intentional organization, an outline, okay? The outline with your evidence. Now, you'll notice here that I've actually separated out your blueprint, your outline is separate from the evidence. So put all your stuff in here first. And if you end up just copy and pasting stuff to the blueprint from there to find a good organization, hey, I should totally start off with this. When I went to this restaurant and tried this food out this one night, bam, great, you're good to go, right? And if you decide to change it, you can shift it around. But I want to see evidence, everything in here linked, text, all that fun stuff. The evidence in here that's text should be in the form that you're thinking of using it in your paper, not just the quotes from the person unless you're using the quotes. And then the blueprint is you trying to organize it in some kind of outline form so that it makes sense. All right. After that, you turn the blueprint into an article. And we'll talk about that a little bit more next week. But that's where I want you guys to be at. All right. So let's talk about citations for the article. You will not be doing in-text citations, okay? In blogs, in food writing and stuff, people don't generally do in-text citations unless it's an academic form. And I don't want academic. I want something a little bit more natural with your own voice this time, which means that you're going to have to be doing narrative citations. Now, if you don't remember what that is, there's a whole slide deck in quarter two, but essentially, somewhere in the integration of the evidence that you're utilizing, you will be listing the author. All right. I don't necessarily need the page number this time. I do need the author. So the so and so said da 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 da, and then you give me that evidence. When I interviewed my grandmother, blah 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 blah. Okay, something like of that nature. All right. Or my aunt said that my grandmother always loved do 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 do. Right. So in other words, I didn't just even say I got this from my aunt. Sure, but she's talking about my grandmother. So this is about introducing that evidence, integrating that evidence in a natural way. It should feel like it's part of your writing. Some of you, you're not going to have a problem with this. It's going to be easy. Some of you are going to struggle with this, all right? But everything is cited, but now it's narrative citations, okay? All right. I've already walked you through the article type thing, the assignment. There's the rubric there and all the fun stuff. Due on March 19th. And that's it. Did we actually cover everything? Where am I at for time? Oh, it doesn't show me until I render. Okay. I think we're doing pretty good. I want to say it was, 30, maybe 40 minutes? All right. So, I don't know. Some of you may have been planning the more detailed law honors lesson plan kind of ends this week. That does not necessarily mean that I will be back in the classroom next week. So I will let you guys know as soon as I find out when I will be back. Okay. I don't know that I'll give a more detailed or longer detailed type one. I think things are kind of rocking and rolling as they go. I'm going to have someone bring me your vocabs, so make sure you get those turned in this week. And if I need to, I'll grade them remote and have them updated. I'm also going to be grading your paragraph responses and trying to make some comments on them. But we're just going to kind of keep proceeding as we can. Okay. And that's all I got. I hope you guys, good luck with the academic advising. All right. Just a couple of side things. Don't forget to ask about academies if you're interested in that. Number one. Number two, think about taking a class you would never normally take. If you've never done art before, think about taking art. If you've never done theater, you're like, I'm not an actor. Great, they've got tech theater and stuff. If instruments are kind of tough and kicking off, right? But you could do percussion or something. But I encourage you guys, because junior year is the first year where you don't have PE and you've got that open spot. Don't just fill it with an AP. All right. Consider taking a class you would never normally take, because this is a great time to try out some stuff you would never normally do. Academic advising, and then we go from there. So it should be a nice weekend, I think. I think it's going to get up to the 50s. So hopefully all the snow that's left is melted and everyone can go outside and enjoy themselves. All right. I think this is probably the last snow of the year. So let's hear it for spring. I hope you guys have a great week. Bye.